Thumbnail complete. Hello everyone and welcome to this first quarter of 2023's reading wrap up. So this is everything I've read in the first quarter of this year from January all the way till the 1st of April. This year started slow and I got real worried. Because I was like, why is everything so quiet? I'm freelance. So if things are quiet, so is my money, so is my income, so is my bank account, and I don't want that quiet, I want that loud. So I was very concerned, but then work picked up, thank goodness. However, so far so good, we're surviving, we're moving. Anyway, so the first book I read this year was a classic, Goodnight Mr. Tom. I've definitely read this before. This is like my third or fourth time reading it. I remember first reading it when I was in year 6 or so. So I was about like 11 to 12 years old. For those of you who don't know, it is like a British children's classic book. So it's on World War II and on the evacuees. Kids in major cities like London would be shipped out into the countryside where presumably it was safer and enemy ships weren't targeting them, so they would like not be bombed to death and destroyed in rubble and fire, because war is horrendous and unnecessary. So it follows William Beach, or Will Beach, who is evacuated out, and he moves in with Tom Oakley, who is an older gentleman who's very cranky. He lives alone with his dog, doesn't really talk to anyone, and he's just like stuck with this child who is kind of too traumatized to speak. And it's like a really beautiful story of their like relationship forming. It's about healing from trauma, it's about healing from childhood abuse, and it's very warming and I really love it, and it's very comforting to read. I will give a warning, like there's just some things that every now and then it's just like a bit racist or like a bit sexist, or like our ideas of what gender norms are. It's kind of challenged but kind of not. It was first published in 1983, so yeah, some of the ideas are a bit behind. Yes, things were of its time and all that stuff, but with children's novels, this is a big debate actually in UK publishing. Like a lot of old literature is, for children's books especially, contains a lot of like just straight up racism, and there's lots of calls and debates on whether or not like, oh, censorship, should we not take these things out, should we not publish these books anymore? And I'm just like, add a footnote where the word or thing appears, just put a footnote saying, by the way, this is what happened, this is why it happened, this is why it's not okay, and we don't do this anymore. Like, it's not hard, just print footnotes into your books. Next book I started, but I haven't finished reading it, and it's an ebook. I'll put a screenshot of the title here. It is The Actor and the Target. For those who don't know, I'm an actor. I hate myself when I say that every time. But yes, I act, or more accurately, trying to. I didn't go to drama school because I can't afford that. No one can. And also I don't want to pay thousands to be hate crimed when I can just experience that for free. However, it means that like I still need to refresh myself and learn how to act practically through workshops and through readings as well. I've heard about The Actor and the Target a lot, and I picked it up and it's fantastic. It's so good. It's so good, because a big thing when you're kind of acting, a main fear and paralysis is I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. When you're in the middle of a role, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And this book kind of like walks you through the kind of mental process and the thinking that needs to go on in your head, and taking yourself out of that fear and out of that paralysis, and like finding your target as the actor. I believe it's a translation, so it was originally written in Russian and it's been translated in English. It's brilliant. It's honestly so good. I've just been like highlighting just sections and sections, and just it's so good. It's very unpretentious as well, because sometimes I find discussions about acting, it's very up themselves. I don't know how else to describe it. This book is a very like, here it is kind of tone. Take what you want, don't take what you want, but this is how it is for me. Next book is The Richest Man in Babylon, The Success Secrets of the Ancients, and it's written by George S. Clayson, How do I describe this book? So last year I read Rich Dad Poor Dad for the first time, and I have a lot of thoughts about it, and this book was kind of recommended to me as well. So I was actually on set as an extra for something else. I was chatting to someone that I'd met before, and we were talking about how we both read Rich Dad Poor Dad and how we don't agree with a lot of the thinking and the philosophy and just kind of the mindset, but it's really important to kind of understand how these people work, how extremely wealthy, privileged people who are the ones making the decisions in this world, they are the policy makers, which is terrifying. They're the ones in control, they're the ones in the power, they're the ones writing the rules, they're the ones who set up the system. And you're going to have to understand it. You have to understand how they think so that you can actually navigate it and work your way through this system. It is very much rooted in poor people are poor because they're stupid and they can't think their way out of it, they can't work hard enough to get out of it. There's a lot of foundation of these kind of thinkings, which we kind of all know, but it's really useful to go in a bit further and just really see like, oh, that's what you think of us, this is why you think this of us. Okay, and just know what you're going up against. Anyway, me and this lovely person, we were talking about this book, and he also recommended that he was currently reading The Richest Man in Babylon. This book is very, very influential. A lot of people read it and then they're like, oh, this made me rich. So this book is written in 1926. It's like financial advice, kind of. It's kind of like a classic financial advice book. I imagine a lot of like your boys in Canary Wharf have read alongside like The Art of War, and now they think that's why they trade so well, but you know, whatever. Anyway, so it kind of pretends and tells some parables set in ancient Babylon, and then kind of like follows these lessons being taught through time all the way through to the 1920s. It's like the 7 cures, or like the 7 ways to generate money and wealth, and like the 5 laws of gold, how money works, how to protect and invest in your wealth. A lot of it is kind of like pretty solid advice. Not all of it is super applicable, I would say, for everyone. It was definitely interesting. It was very worth reading for me. It's just good to get into the psyche of rich people, you know what I mean? Or people who think they're very financially savvy. Specifically people who think poverty is a result of individual choices and not systemic issues. I mean, definitely like the individuals play a part, and like their choices and their decisions and their mindsets for sure, but that's not it. It's not it. We don't live in a world where it's just like, if you work hard you'll get rich. I wish. I wish. I read this, which is Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. I love this series so much. This is the 3rd book in the Wayfarer series, and it's, oh, I love this series so much. I love it so much. It is sci-fi. It's set like way in the future, where like quite a lot of like major alien races are like, they live together somewhat harmoniously, and it's just kind of following stories of like certain individuals. It's kind of like a new cast of characters each time. Sometimes there's like overlap, but it's so good. It's so good. It's so rich. It's so vivid. It's breathtaking. Her imagination, her world building, it's amazing, honestly. So this book is specifically follows how centuries after the last humans left Earth, they fled on the Exodus fleet, which is kind of spaceships? Big spaceships, basically. Sorry, Becky. Big spaceships in space. And most humans now live on planets, but some people still live on these ships, and they have a very diligent way of living. Everything is recycled, everything is reused, nothing goes to waste, and there's this kind of very much sense of social cohesion that must happen in order for them to survive and kind of maintain their way of life as well. But more and more people are kind of leaving the fleet, and they're going to live on planets and places like that because it's kind of more fun. And it follows several characters and their stories and their relationships around the fleet and each other, and it's stunning. It's stunning. What really is an interesting thing is how the fleet treat or bury their dead. So Becky Chambers was inspired about how there is a real movement and real organizations out there that instead of just burying you in the earth, they kind of turn you into, this sounds really morbid, but they turn you into compost, and then your remains are used to like grow plants, grow crops, etc. And there's like, it sounds very morbid, but it's quite beautiful, because you'll return to the earth and then you'll become something that nourishes and enriches the lives of other people, or maybe even your loved ones, and this kind of cycle repeats. And yeah, there's something really lovely about that, and this book is just stunning. It's just stunning. It's like I've noticed in a lot of sci-fi books is that's not super inclusive. It's a lot of man goes to space and pew 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 pew. That's the story. And there's not a really, if you imagine like a futuristic world, a truly futuristic world, like we're gonna have advancements in how we perceive gender, because if it's in space in a super futuristic society, it's going to be gender inclusive. It's going to take into account that we are different species, and how do we live harmoniously together, and taking into account each other's cultures and ways of being, and body language and languages, and how we've developed technologies for that, how bodies are different, and we very easily have the tech to ensure that they can live to their full potential. And we don't really see, in my experience anyway, a lot of sci-fi books kind of striving to do that, but this one kind of does it really fluently and excellently. And it's just kind of like a major milestone in science fiction, I believe, and kind of written literature as well, personally speaking. Next up we have Unexpected Vanilla by Lee Jaime, translated by Soje. So I had a wonderful pleasure of working with Tilted Access Press last year. Tilted Access Press is a small independent publisher that focuses on translated literature. So they take books from around the world, written in different languages, translate them to English and publish them. This is a poetry collection, and to kind of celebrate it being published in the UK, the wonderful Lee Jaime went on a tour, and Tilted Access Press asked me to come and kind of help run a workshop or host one with them. So I run a poetry collective called BC Poets, which is British, East and Southeast Asian poets. So people of similar heritage to me who are based in the UK. We can actually like find each other and work with each other, encourage each other, and just there's power in solidarity basically. So I've been a poet since like 2016, and I was like, why does no one look like me? Like, we're in London, it's very diverse. Where are my people at? And I met 2 or 3 other people, and then I was like, I should set up this collective, shouldn't I? And my friends were like, yeah. So I set it up, and then they knew like one other person, and then that person knew another person, and that person knew someone else. So now we're like a strong collective for maybe, I want to say 20 to 30 people, which is really lovely. I'm no longer alone. Woo! More of us write poetry than I expected. So Tilted Express got in touch with me, and then we hosted a writing workshop. It was really lovely. It was very soothing. We had bubble tea as well, and it was such a beautiful workshop. Lee Jaime is a beautiful soul, a beautiful spirit. I found a translator to help Lee Jaime with the tour, so we were able to communicate, even though Lee Jaime doesn't speak that much English. I don't speak any Korean, but even with a language barrier, like, you can form connections with people and like have and share experiences. Like, we wrote poetry together, and then she actually had like some natural nail polish that's kind of made with flower extract, I think, and she kind of like painted painted everyone's fingernails after the workshop. Soje's really cool. Soje's based in New York normally, and they did the English translation. And yeah, it was just like such a wonderful event. Really, really lovely. The poetry is described as like essential and surrealist, where it celebrates women's sexuality. This is for the lesbians, this is for the gay girls, and it's really stunning. I love it. I really loved reading this. I really recommend it. Also support independent publishers. This next book I returned to the library as soon as I could, and I've already talked about it before, but it is Backlash by Marnie Riches. It's a crime book. They said it was like gritty and dark and funny, and I was disappointed in all 3 areas. I don't like crime books, so I picked it up thinking maybe I'll like this one. I did not. It was just kind of dreadful, and yeah. Anyway, moving on. So this book is Japan, A View from the Bath. It's a non-fiction book examining the culture of bathing and bathhouses in Japan. So I watched Mina Lei's amazing video on the cult of cleanliness, and I believe she referenced that book in her video, and I just like learning new things. I like non-fiction. I like being clean. It was actually super interesting. Like, I've never been to Japan and I really want to go to bathhouses. So it's really interesting to see how they view cleanliness, how they view bathing in like a day-to-day sense and a spiritual sense. Kind of just rethinking how we bathe and why we bathe and things like that. Love me a bit of sociology, I do. I finally got round to reading On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Ocean Vuong, if you don't know, won the T.S. Eliot Prize back in, I want to say 2018, 2019 or so. I think he was the first Asian person to win it. Definitely the first Vietnamese person to win it. So he's generally a poet, and this one is kind of his memoir, essentially like his autobiography. It's a masterpiece. It's, you know what I mean? It's just breathtaking and destroying and so emotional and so beautiful. This is a work of genius. This is a work of genius. I'm not kidding, it really is. It's written as a letter from a son to a mother who cannot read. So Ocean and his family fled the Vietnam War. We in the West don't really learn much about, and we misconstrue it and we mistell the stories. But it was truly devastating, and really devastating doesn't really cover it. And about kind of adjusting to life here. And obviously Ocean's gone on to be kind of like a legend in the literary world. But his mother can't read. His mother can't read his work, his writing, and there's so much he wants to say to her as a queer Vietnamese son that he can only kind of put in writing, and she can't read it, and there's something so devastating about that. And there's a section which kind of really just about how he knows his mother believes in reincarnation, so maybe one day she'll be reborn as someone who's able to go to school and read, and she will read this book. You can't put it into words. Stuff like that. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Beautiful. This is a poetry pamphlet written by my wonderful friend, who goes by Kay Blair, and they wrote, Jesus Loves You, God Hasn't Decided Yet. What a title. It is their poetry pamphlet. It's a micro chapbook or poetry pamphlet. It is with Ghost City Press. It is pay what you can, so please do pay what you can, and all the money will go to my friend, so please do get your hands on this poetry. I am obviously biased because Kay Blair is my friend. This is really good. This is such a good poetry collection. Oh my gosh. So I met Kay Blair on a writing program we did, and then we went to the Arvon writing retreat, which is a writing retreat in the middle of nowhere, and we stayed together for about a week or so. We were roommates, and they were roommates. We were roommates. And we did all this writing together, and they talked about this project they were working on, and I was like, I can't wait. I want to read it right now. So when it came out, I got my hands on it, and it's so beautiful. So Kay Blair is very queer and went to a Catholic all-girls school, I believe, and it was a lot. So if you want queer Catholic angst, get it? It's just stunning and funny and playful and just so good. It's just so good. It's just amazing. Get it. I got this book in a charity shop. It's called Daily Rituals Women at Work, How Great Women Make Time, Find Inspiration and Get to Work by Mason Curry. Mason Curry wrote another book on kind of, I can't remember what it's called, but also on like the daily routines of famous artists, writers, performers, actors, singers, and people like that. And this is his book purely dedicated to female artists. It is a non-fiction book. It's a massive collection of information about people's daily routines. So as you can see on the cover, like people like Nina Simone or Zadie Smith or Coco Chanel, even though she's a Nazi, Virginia Woolf, and all that stuff. And it's really fascinating. I love finding out about people's routines. And there's just so many people there, and it really helps you discover like new artists and new creatives as well, and it's super fascinating. I like to start off my day by reading like a couple, so I've been kind of working my way through it, and I really enjoy this. The only thing I would have liked to have seen was, a lot of people still don't know this about their own bodies, but those kind of assigned as female, we don't run on 24-hour cycles, which this book kind of puts everyone in, like what they do in a day. We run on our menstrual cycles, so our cycle is more 28 days rather than one day within the 24-hour. So I would like to have seen that being taken into account, but then I am aware that this was written by a man, and also not all the women in this book are aware that we run on hormonal cycles that take place over weeks rather than a day, because we live in a patriarchy. We have to conform. This is The Disordered Cosmos, A Journey into Dark Matter, Space-Time and Dreams, deferred by Chanda Prescott Weinstein. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. Apologies if I have gotten it wrong. I've just had a quick Google. I know Chanda talks about being agender in this book, but I believe she does go by she, her pronouns according to her Twitter bio anyway, so that's pronouns I will use. So Chanda is one of fewer than 100 Black American women to earn a PhD from the Department in Physics in America. America is very big, and less than 100 Black Americans have a PhD in physics. It kind of ties in space and physics and this desperate fight for equality, to be respected as a human being. The thing with space and physics and science, you might think that, oh, you know, it's science, it's logic, it's facts, it's science, it's maths. You don't need to bring in, you know, people and like race and gender equality and the fact that people are trans. Like, that's not relevant. Science is just this like pure thing that is never touched or needs to be touched by people and their like issues. And no, it's very much not the case. It's very much not the case. Science has had horrific impacts and roots, and it's been used to justify awful things throughout history, from just straight up genocide to what happened in Unit 731 to eugenics and so on. And you can't really isolate it, because science impacts and is about humans, and humans are the ones practicing science. Like, it's people doing the science there and lecturing and researching, and if those people aren't respected as human beings, if they're under assault, if they're under microaggressions on a daily basis, how are people like us going to be able to do science compared to people who are able to just get on with it? Chanda, or Professor Chanda, Professor Prescott Weinstein, the professor says in the book she has a PTS flare-up, and she kind of is out of action, or she has to like deal with that for 3 days, and she knows someone else didn't have to do that, and he did more science than she did in those last 3 days. And that's kind of just one example of how just the crap people have to deal with Like, we all want to just do the science. They just want to do the work. But it's everything else making it the issue. It's not people like us making science complicated with like our race issues. It's other people. It's other people using science or the name of science to cause harm, or causing harm and preventing us from using science to do good things or discover things or learn things. Like, she very much just wants to learn cool space stuff, but we know we don't live in that world. We don't live in that world. We're able to just learn about cool space stuff. There's more to it. It was quite a difficult book to read, just kind of emotionally, and also it's quite dense, and there's a lot to dense with like information. There's like a lot to think about as well, and also like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a physicist, I'm just a poet. All I have is a GCSE in physics. I did do extremely well, for I got 100% across the board every single exam. But yeah, that's kind of where my knowledge, where my education lies. But I really enjoy learning about space. So some stuff was a bit beyond me, but I like the mental challenge of reading stuff like this anyway. It took me like a year to read it, I'm not gonna lie to you. It was just worth every reading. Every time I opened the book, it was worth it. I can't recommend this enough. You may have left me an angry gammon comment in the down below about me being a freaking liberal, anti-racism, woke person. You can cry about it. This book I had a deeply unpleasant time with. I'm really sorry. It's NW by Sadie Smith. I'm sorry, Sadie. I'm sorry. It is a tragic comedy following four Londoners after they left the childhood council estate and they moved on with their lives, and it's kind of following their stories. And I couldn't read it. I just couldn't. It wasn't interesting for me. It's written in a very postmodern style, which is to say, it's a lot of lists. It's just listing things. And I love me a list poem, but I don't know if I can do a list book. I found it really hard, and it's supposed to be, I get that it's supposed to be kind of like mirroring the franticness of London life, of things just constantly hitting at you, passing by you, going boom, 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 boom. And the words and the writing is supposed to be like that as well. I think with living in London is that, yes, everything is around you all the time. But what you do is kind of you shut a lot of it out, and then you kind of follow as much as you can. That's how you survive in London. But this book, there's not really a place for you to just kind of focus on and shut out some of the noise. It's all the noise. I just found this book very hard. I know some people really love this book, which is great. Not for me. I do want to read another Zadie Smith book, so I will give her a go again. It's just this book. We didn't get along. It's me, not you. I'm sorry. What I did really enjoy, however, was Towards Zero by Agatha Christie. It's a murder mystery, and it was just really fun to read. I really enjoyed this. I don't really know what to say about it without spoiling it, but I am a big fan of rich people going somewhere on holiday and then having a terrible time, and something needs to be solved. So yes, if you love Knives Out, if you loved Glass Onion, I believe Rian Johnson took a lot of inspiration from Agatha Christie from murder mystery books anyway. And lastly, I'm in the middle of reading this, or rather I've just started, but it is the last book in the Wayfarer series, called The Galaxy and the Ground Within by our wonderful Becky Chambers. It's the finale. I'm very sad. Basically, on a planet, three strangers are thrown together and they have to kind of, it follows their stories. I don't really know much about it at this stage. Something big has happened and now they're kind of stuck on this planet together and learning about their stories and their backstories and like, why are they here, where are they going, blah 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 blah. I'm reading this and I'm very, very sad. I kind of wish Becky Chambers did what Ian M. Banks did with the Culture series, which is a sci-fi series he wrote, and it's like 10 books or so. Basically, he only stopped writing it because he died. I read in an interview, it's very bittersweet, but there's a written interview in the back of the last book in the Culture series where they ask him how many more culture books do you think you'll write? And he was like, I've got loads of ideas. I have so many ideas. This could keep going. I don't even know how long this could keep going for. Unfortunately, he passed. May he rest in peace. And I was kind of hoping Becky Chambers would do the same. I'm not gonna lie. Just write. Just keep. You know, they can be years apart. Just keep it going. But I do understand and respect that some writers just want to move on and find new stories to tell. So I will treasure this series. Thank you very much. That is all the books I have read this quarter. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope I've become a more successful booktuber. Thank you very much for watching. I am at Kukadoodles on pretty much all social media platforms. And I will see you next time. Bye!